Hello, and welcome back to the Scrollies podcast. I am Squat Cobbler, and I am, as always, here with my co-host.
Hey, what's up? I'm Team Red NATO. I'm a ninja on Final Fantasy XIV. It's pretty cool. You probably don't know another ninja in your life.
You know, I might have ninjas around me all the time, but would I be aware of them? Probably not.
Exactly, Squat Cobbler. You think this recording is taking place, but I knew exactly what you were going to say because I'm a ninja.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm actually right behind you.
Whoa, wow.
Hello, Squat Cobbler.
Well, of course you are. Of course you are. We're here in the Squirrely studio. And we're joined for the first time ever, never has he been here before, by our very special guest. It's CodeSynth.
Hey, hello. Definitely the first time I have been here. Thank you for having me here for the first time.
Our second time guest, but first time podcaster. How does it feel?
You know, it's good. It feels good to set a record.
Here's the thing. I think for our topic, the fact that you're back is great. It's about learning every time you do something. Am I right, Squat Cobbler?
You know, much as we won't make that same mistake twice in that Koopa shell being thrown at us over an empty pit. We have likewise created the synthetic redundancy, so this will be Code's last second appearance.
You know, a lot of folks in software world look at redundancy as a bad thing, but I gotta say I'm pretty happy about it because you could have just as easily said, you know what, Code clearly wasn't meant to be, you know, maybe we'll see you again down the road next year. So, hey, I'm glad to be here again for the first time.
Wasn't in the cards, gotta keep trucking along with all the long list of Scrollies guests now. We like to collect synthetic salooners as if they're infinity stones, because once we got them all in our gauntlet of podcast guests, we can make our wishes come true. So, Code, it's great to have you here again for the first time, and we are going to be talking about something that you're very, very knowledgeable on. Kaizo running. Very hard ROM hacks of classic games such as Super Mario World, among others. Code, tell us a little bit about how you first got started in the Kaizo scene.
Sure. I will just throw out a small correction. I would not claim to be very knowledgeable about Kaizo whatsoever. I'm but a fledgling in the Kaizo scene, but it's a good time. Honestly, I don't even know how I got into it in the first place. I think it's just something that I happened across on YouTube one day, probably around the time Mario Maker came out. You know, people were uploading all kinds of Mario Maker videos, and I just happened to stumble upon somebody that was a Mario Maker player and also a Kaizo ROM hack player. Ended up watching their videos, and I actually watched Kaizo players for a couple years. You know, I found a bunch of people, Barbarous King, Grand Pooh Bear, Carl Sagan 42, all people that I watched in the early days and still do. But for some reason, it just never occurred to me to start playing them until I think about August of last year. So actually, it's almost exactly a year that I started playing, and it has been quite a ride.
A year on Twitch and a year playing Kaizo. You know, misses you, but I'd say that you'd still be working on that piano puzzle, whereas you've completed at least a handful of Kaizo collections at this point. So probably for the best.
I tell you, I swear I did that piano puzzle right, 10 times in a row, and it would not let me. But I did promise you that I would return to Myst on my 1-year anniversary, and that is fast approaching. So
I'm holding you to it, Code. It's well, let's just say it's giving me hope. It's the only thing giving me hope left in this world. Yeah, Mario Maker, I feel like that is the entry for a lot of people into these, even if not Kaizo, these ultra difficult Mario levels and platforming situations. I feel like Mario is just such a baked in standard for the platformer that people just kind of know, okay, Koopa Shell, I can jump off that, I can grab that, I can throw that, it comes out, it kills me, so I gotta do it quick. And just so many rules like that are so ingrained in people that Kaizo's pretty easy to get into there, and Mario Maker makes that very accessible for those that are a little wary of ROM hacks. I have not gotten super into that aspect of the game, but I have played a lot of Mario Maker. It's probably one of my favorite community-supported games on Switch, of which there's so many, but that's definitely one. I played some remakes of DKC 2 levels at one point on stream. I almost got through them all. I think I got up to the last world, and then I never did a finale, but Ratnado found that for me, so thank you, Ratnado, for that. Some of those levels might even qualify as Kaizo, because when you're trying to remake any of the Disco Train levels in Mario Maker, you're dealing with some tight platform in there. So that's me, Ratnado. As ever a fan of ultra difficult games, how about yourself? Have you gotten into anything Kaizo-like?
I have gotten into one thing Kaizo-like, but not playing them, just watching them. You might say that CodeSynth and his stream has had a magnet effect. He's frame perfect his way into my heart, and he regrabs me every single time that he plays one. Recently, he did that one that they were doing at GDQ. I can't remember what was it called. What was it called, Code?
GDQ Kaizo Relay Race.
Yeah. It had like all these cool effects. It looked dope. As far as like Kaizo, not quite. I played some Mario Maker. I plan to get it. I should have got it when it was on sale a couple of weeks ago because I really want to. Pass it over for some other games though. But, I'm into trying it. I told Abby that I would try hers if she made one. She said she wants to make a Kaizo level. That's what I'll say right now. When Abby makes a Kaizo level, I will play that. I will fully immerse myself. I will become the world record holder of it.
Abby Artfox, you are going to be the catalyst for greatness. The world record Kaizo runner Ratnado. He's just waiting for that moment, and that moment will come when you complete your level. So we'll be waiting patiently for that day, Abby Artfox. But that's excellent. That's excellent. Super Mario World, which I think is probably the most popular baseline standard for Kaizo levels. That's a game that I think we've all played back in childhood, back even recently. But the vanilla Mario World is about as far as I have experience with it. I think I played like one ROM hack called Return to Dinosaur Land, but that wasn't like centered on the difficulty aspect of it. Code, would you say that game had a big ROM hack difficult scene more so recently, or was it even before that?
Good question. I think ROM hacks as a thing have kind of always been a thing, even to a small extent. Of course, in the early days, it was just very crude, messing with values in the game and changing what you could. As far as Super Mario World goes, I know that it was, I think, 2000 when Fusoya released a tool called Lunar Magic, which is kind of the de facto editing tool for SMW, at least the place to get started these days. And that really kind of, blew the whole ROM hack scene wide open. And you didn't really have Kaizo hacks appearing for quite a while after that, but people were making, things like you mentioned, kind of like story hacks, spiritual successors, etc.
I think one of the things that you had mentioned to me before, Code, I've asked you a lot of questions about Kaizo stuff. You've always talked to me about it. And I remember you specifically talking about like the resurgence of it following Mario Maker, despite that not being like the platform that people play it on. I remember when Audio was trying to pick it up. Sorry, buddy. Sorry to out you like this. But I remember you were dying a lot. And Audio was like, at the end, he was talking about it. And you had mentioned that one of the things is that the physics are a little bit different in Mario Maker, which is weird because I thought that would be about as much as it was. It seems like it should be a one-to-one with Super Mario World.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that's kind of something that a lot of Kaizo players bring up. A lot of people have like a really negative outlook toward Mario Maker, but, understandable because it's a very different thing. But I think for Mario Maker they wanted consistency of no matter what style you choose, the level will play the same. Because they have Super Mario World, SMB3, and New Super Mario World, New Super Mario Brother. I'm not so familiar with the newer ones, but
yeah.
But those would all play very differently if they used the original physics. So I think Mario Maker was just going for ease of entry for folks. No matter what the visual style was, it would play the same physics.
From what what game specifically does that focus on for physics?
I think it's its own thing, actually. I don't think it really mirrors anything else. It's probably the closest to the new ones, but yeah, it's a little more, I don't know, slippery. People tend to say, it's not quite as precise, I guess, as Super Mario World or Super Mario Brothers 3 or, anything like that. But it's definitely something you can get used to and get good at, obviously, because there are some crazy, Mario Maker players.
Yeah, I remember reading at the point it came out that it was based on the new Super Mario Bros. Physics, that line of games.
That makes sense.
Say what you will about, when they released, but Super Mario Brothers on the NES, that was revolutionary for its time, but playing it now, for one, the screen doesn't go back, so you gotta make sure you don't walk yourself into a bind. And also the physics there are a little, it's pretty stop and go. There's not a lot of momentum there. So I'm glad they uniformed it as well. Super Mario World is probably my second favorite as far as how those classic games. I'm partial to Super Mario Brothers 3 control wise, but yeah, I think having them uniform likewise was a good choice.
Yeah, Super Mario Brothers 3 is, it's a really good game. Really good controls. I think it's easy to understand how that can be a lot of people's favorite game. Unfortunately, there are some hacks of Super Mario Brothers 3, but it's not as easy to jam a bunch of extra stuff in on the original Nintendo. There's a few more limitations there than the Super Nintendo. So
certainly hasn't
quite taken off, but it is still a thing. Super Mario Brothers 2 actually too is getting Kaizo hacks now as well.
Oh, how about that? I think you mean Doki Doki Panic is getting Kaizo hacks with Mario skins.
That's right. Mario DLC.
Yeah, exactly.
I just realized what I need to look up right now is Bubsy Kaizo. There has to be some Bubsy Kaizo out there, right?
Oh, man.
It's the 2D side-scrolly for you, Rat. There's got to be at least a couple. A couple impassioned Bubsy fans who are also ROM hackers.
Hey, we're out here. There's like 5 of us.
There's literally 5 of us.
Funnily enough, like Kaizo just means, like, it's just a Japanese word that means altered or restructured. So I guess technically any ROM hack is a Kaizo ROM hack because it's just a reorganization of the game. But as far as what we consider to be Kaizo now, it's really because of one specific hack that came out in 2007 called Kaizo Mario World, which was pretty much what you'd expect. A lot of really difficult, somewhat cruel level design that someone made for their friend, and it got put on the internet, and here we are, 15 years later, it started an entire community of hundreds, thousands of people. Pretty impressive.
Which is pretty crazy because it has now become a flavor unto itself. It's not like, oh, I like platformers and the flavor is Kaizo. Now Kaizo is the thing, and there's different types of Kaizos within there. I've seen some of you played that look kind of nice. There's good music. It seems like a really nice experience and something I'd like to do. It has some of those elements of Kaizo of learning some of these tricks that people have found within the engine. But then there's a lot of other ones that are like, no, this is meant to test you. Invictus, I think, is kind of like that, right?
Invictus is definitely is like your first official test, I guess, when it comes to, major hacks. It definitely pushes you from that, beginner to the intermediate, and it is difficult. It is difficult. Yeah. That being said, there's a whole other difficulty level after that in the categorization, which is expert, and that stuff gets even crazier.
It's crazy. I watch code sometimes, just and other people too. I've seen other people, and just especially when their clips come up. Hot Loco Grandpa, Ucane's, Curious and Spurious. I've seen some of their Kaizo clips, and it's just blows my mind. And even watching you do some of these over and over and over, and then stringing together these 20 crazy tricks. And at the end of it, I'm like, how do you have the patience for that? How do you have the ability to just stick with it? I mean, obviously, there's something to it that is about the challenge and beating the challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah, for me, it's kind of a challenge to myself. I'm not really playing against anybody else. And so I guess to that extent, I prefer hacks that are what I consider fair. They're difficult, but they're not trying to trick me in any way. They're not trying to just unfairly throw things at me. It's like, here's the challenge, here's what you have to do. And that's always the style of game that I've liked when it comes to difficult games. Super Meat Boy, I can't really think of anything else. Hollow Knight, these are games that I would consider to kind of be in that fair but difficult category. You think about, there's been other games in the past. I don't know if you ever played the game I Want to Be the Guy or I Want to Be the Boshi. Where
I've heard of it before.
those games were just, you walk forward, something just drops on your head and kills you, that wouldn't normally kill you. And it's just that over and over and over again. It's just learning by dying. And that kind of, I don't have the patience for that.
I think Kaizo, you kind of have to bring that mindset to the table. It's not really like you learn it from playing Kaizo. It's like, hey, I play difficult games already, and I'm fine with that. I can deal with the constant death and restarting. So Kaizo's just more of that, but that's all it is. So it'll be a walk in the park. Code, would you say that the rise in popularity of Kaizo in the 2010s, do you think that might have had anything to do with just the wider acceptance of difficult games like Super Meat Boy, Dark Souls, Hollow Knight, games like that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, Mario Maker, obviously, like we mentioned, was a huge influence of kind of pushing people more into, fair but difficult challenges. But yeah, I think across the board, we kind of have this push toward difficult games. And it's not for everybody. Obviously not all games need to be that, but there is more of a resurgence, if you will, of difficult games these days. And I think for the most part, that balance of making sure the games are fair, the physics aren't trying to just actively kill you, I think that's something we're moving toward as well. Because even if you look at something like Dark Souls, it's fair to say that the games have gotten progressively, not necessarily easier, but they are more fair in level design and whatnot. They are like, here's the challenge. The challenge is just the difficulty, not, oh, the ground suddenly disappeared and now you're dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Proc who said that Dark Souls 2 just became mean. It wasn't just hard, but it was mean. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know if we're ever getting an easy mode like a lot of people wanted with Elden Ring, but I think it's definitely, becoming more accessible in terms of just it's all relying on you and your skills and not just jankiness.
Absolutely, yeah.
We talked about that last time a little bit about Hollow Knight and how I didn't enjoy that. And notoriously, audio always gives me crap for not liking Dark Souls. And I just want to clarify here. Hollow Knight is something I do play offline now, and it's a lot of fun to me. I think it was just like learning and being in front of people. But also Dark Souls, especially after I played Final Fantasy Strangers of Paradise. That game was pretty similar. I think people compare it to Nioh. They compare it to, Soulsborne games. And I do like them. I do like games that are difficult, but I 100% hate games that are mean.
Right.
Games that are like that. And Strangers of Paradise is a difficult game. And I stuck through it on the hardest mode. The first playthrough hardest mode, there's an extreme mode after, but I didn't play through it on the hardest mode, and I really did like it. And again, like I always say, I think it just needed to be Final Fantasy flavored for me to get into it.
Oh, that's very cool.
We're all creatures of habit, aren't we?
I still need to play that, past the demo at some point. That seemed like a very cool game. But I think accessibility in difficult games is an interesting conversation, because I kind of have the conversation with myself a lot, because I don't know what the answer is. People talk about everybody should be able to enjoy these games. Say you just want to experience Dark Souls. What if there's an easy mode so that everybody can experience it if they just don't have the skills or don't have the time or just don't want to put in, the effort to, get the muscle memory to be able to play the game. I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with that. A lot of people get offended by that notion. But I also think that those games the difficulty is largely part of the enjoyment of the game. So I think that's fair if people want to play it that way. But I also think, you might not be getting as much of the game as, somebody else might, just because there's not a lot of lore. There's not much lore or story or anything like that. The game is just the difficulty. And that goes for Kaizo as well. I mean, there's no story there. It's just difficulty. If you take that away, I don't know what you really have.
Yeah. Well, it kind of seems like with Kaizo especially too, that And I mean, I guess Dark Souls in a way too, they're kind of harkening back to a time, say, for a lot of gamers when they first started and games were hard purposely to like extend the playtime. So you've got your games in the 80s where it's like, oh, no save points, not very many lives, like pretty cruel difficulty, and all of that to say, hey, look at this 60-hour game, that, a lot of people try to play retro now and it's like hard. And they don't remember that it's like, oh, back in the day, that was the experience.
Yeah, so you couldn't just rent it from Blockbuster and then beat it in a weekend. You had to keep renting it.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think the arcades probably had a lot to do with that as well. A lot of arcade games were obviously designed to just get as much money out of you as possible. So constant dying. It's hilarious to me looking at early beat 'em ups. And it wasn't enough that the games were just difficult, but you had beat 'em ups where your health was just constantly draining as you were walking. Or I think Gauntlet did that, didn't it? It was just like, probably you're just constantly dying, and it's like, well, this doesn't seem fair.
Well, that is just cruel. But arcades are a whole nother matter. Maybe we'll have to cover that down the road. But jumping back to Kaizo real quick. We've obviously seen it progress a ton in the recent years, Mario Maker being a huge push for that, bringing a lot of new people in, a lot of new ideas. Where do you think it goes from here?
Excellent question. I think at this point, the sky's the limit. Rat mentioned it earlier, but the GDQ relay race levels that were debuted, those were kind of meant to be a spectacle because that is an excellent way to get people interested. People see something like that and they want to play Kaizo. So we saw things introduced there that nobody had ever seen before. Mode 7, level warping, and all kinds of things that were just incredible to see. And I think at this point, we've reached a point where you have enough players that are skilled enough people that are interested enough, enough people that want to watch it, and that crucial component of enough people that have the technical knowledge to basically do anything they want with the game, that you just have this perfect storm of could become anything. I have no idea where it's going to go from here, but it's very cool to see all the new things that people are coming up with. It blows my mind sometimes to see the creativity in the community.
The Venn diagram is continually growing larger and larger in its very narrow overlap. So that's awesome. Now, Code, you yourself have played a handful of ROM hacks, both on stream and I assume off stream. Do you have any personal recommendations from the ones that you've played?
Excellent question. One of my absolute favorites, and this is not going to be a surprise to anybody that's familiar with ROM hacks, but it's actually, I think it came out last year, called Luminescent by, I don't know, it's Borgie Man. Hasn't been made clear to me how to pronounce that. But Luminescent was an incredible intermediate ROM hack, kind of light intermediate. It's difficult, but it's not crazy punishing. Amazing game, amazing design. There's a few others. Love Yourself came out recently, which was a lot of fun by Chandon Tor. I don't know. Those two really stick out in my mind. Those are fun ones that I've played recently. Invictus is always going to be in my mind because that was the first ROM hack I ever watched, actually, way back when I watched people play ROM hacks. And basically 2 years in the making of getting to the point where I could actually play it. And so that's always going to be one of my favorites just because that's maybe more of a personal goal, that it's like, hey, this was what got me started, and I got to the point where I can play it, so I'm happy.
It was full circle. And Luminescence, I believe you mentioned, that had excellent music. I remember watching you stream that some. That music was fantastic. And honestly, that's a huge draw, I think, to Kaizo as well, aside from just the levels, as you get to hear all these 16-bit remixes of all your favorite songs. Like, I think the one that you were playing on stream recently had like Law and Order theme song in one of the levels. I was like, this is not what I normally hear with Mario, but this is cool, I guess.
Yeah, it's amazing. There was another one, I can't remember what it was, but it's got that Wendy's Hot Drinks song in it, and it's just amazing, Big shout out to the music creators, because that all has to be done by hand. That's all, them placing notes that the Super Nintendo has and recreating those songs. And that's not something I will ever be able to do, so I hugely appreciate those folks.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that'll pretty much draw us to a close. Code, thank you so much for coming on today. Please, as a fellow choo-choo boy of Ratnado, shout out.
Choo-choo boys!
Choo-choo!
And a year-long streamer pretty soon coming up. We've been watching Code for about a year. Where can people check you out and what you do?
So CodeSynth is really my name on most platforms. You can find me on Twitch. I stream very irregularly, at least for now. Maybe when I get internet that works correctly, I can go back to normality. Also just Twitter, CodeSynth. I'm on there, and Discord and CodeSynth as well. But I'm not going to tell you the numbers. You have to try to figure those out on your own.
Yeah, over at the Synthetic Saloon, we gotta track down all you guys and narrow in that their Discord you got. But yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Code's a great streamer. Every time I watch, I'm like, man, this guy, he's cool as a cucumber. Nothing's gonna make this guy upset or rage, because I mean, he would have done it by now if it was gonna happen. And also, a year's coming up, so I'm getting my missed playthrough part 2, right?
That's right. Waiting
missed
hard, playthrough. Guys. Donkey Kong Country 2. Hey, I've got a lineup that you're gonna love.
Ooh, I like to hear it.
I have seen Code get angry, but it's never on stream. It's only in those dungeon raids in Final Fantasy XIV, yelling at people, yelling at Proc, yelling at Vivian. Why are you pulling that? Why are you doing that? And I just say I have to keep my volume very low now, because I lost my hearing for about a week. So
that's right. The rage healer. Choo choo.
The rage healer.
Hey, what happens in the Choo Choo Boys voice chat stays in the Choo Choo Boys voice chat. Don't you go bringing that onto Scrolly's Rat.
Man.
It's been great. I mean, well, I've been on Final Fantasy XIV, so I shouldn't say that. But it's been great having you, Code. I've been Squat Cobbler, as always, and I am joined by my co-host.
I'm still Team Ratnado. I'm still a ninja. I'm a choo-choo boy. Come join us, please, 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 please.
Yeah, you can join the ever-growing group of choo-choo boys. Maybe one of these days, Rat, I'll jump back into it. But I think not before Final Fantasy VI, because man, if I have 2 Final Fantasies on my playlist, then it's never gonna happen. It's never gonna happen.
Final Fantasy VI is so good.
It is really good. The critically acclaimed MMORPG has a free trial, that's all I'm saying. And you don't have to be a boy to do it either. Vivian, famously not a boy, but she's still a choo-choo boy. So don't feel like you have to be a boy to play.
Choo-choo boys don't discriminate.
Yeah, just a name.
All right, everyone. We will catch you in the next one. Code, thanks for joining. Rat, you have to join because you're the co-host, but...
Yeah, thank you guys. It's been great.
We will catch you guys in the next one. See ya.
See ya.
Bye. Thanks for doing it again. Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know what happened last time, but
Zencaster made itself no longer our go-to platform is what happened.
Hey, it might have turned out even better this time. I don't know.
Second time's the charm.
Hey, did we tell you that we're going to release the other one at some point? Basically going to be a choose your own adventure, but you're the podcast guest.
You just get to decide what you're saying.
It'll just be like long stretches of silence, and then every now and then we'll just ask a question. The lost episode.
That actually would be hilarious. It's just silence, and then you're like, yeah, that's a good point. I thought about that too. And it's just like...